And we're live. Welcome along, Peter, to another week at SFDC Academy Livestream discussing the world of Salesforce.
Here we are again.
Funny
Always
that.
an exciting time in Salesforce, isn't it?
It's always something happening, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the Summer 20 release that's coming up and some of the features that have come out in the release notes in the past. About a week ago, I think the release notes came out. And there's a few good ones in there, but overall, what's your feeling been, Peter?
I'm not overly excited. Having just said, there's always something exciting going on in Salesforce. I'm a little bit disappointed, I think, in this release. It doesn't seem to, or maybe we're just used to having, some big bang things in there and that type of stuff, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of really exciting things happening in this one. And even the things that you classify as, the true to the core type of stuff, there doesn't seem to be a lot, again, of those releases in there. There are some gems, and some of those we'll talk about now, but, in the overall scheme of things, I'm a bit,
Yeah. Do you think that's because the platform's got so wide and so big in what it does? It's kind of, you end up with these releases that, little incremental features across all of those kind of product lines and different things, and less focus on the one big thing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And also, I think the one thing we have to keep in mind is that there are now products not on the platform, but there's separate products which would have their own release cycle and all that type of stuff as well. And, what we're looking really at is the core platform itself. So, yeah, to a certain degree, that's going to be less and less exciting, I suppose, because we will start seeing more and more of those things in those other products roll in. But I'd still like to see there's if you go to is it still called the Idea Exchange, or I'm not really sure what there's still a lot of things on there and things that have been there forever as well, that just don't seem to be getting through the pipe to into the product, which are things that we are desperately all need. So
yeah, that was quite interesting. Recently, I think there was a prioritization announcement around how some of those ideas had made it through the system and were being put into releases. And there was a lot of debate I saw in the community around, well, it's great to have this transparency, but the downside was, one of the ideas that got approved was like 8 or 9 years old, and it had been approved for Summer 21 as the release, so it's at least a year away again. And I think this was like a reasonably simple improvement to email to case or something like that. So it's obviously hard to keep being super agile when you're as big an organization as it's become.
Yeah. So, I mean, the good thing is the release is coming out. If we look at the dates, I think the dates got pushed back because of everything that's been happening in the world. We are now getting, I have to read this from the screen because, I didn't actually commit this to memory before. The preview instances are being upgraded on May 29 and 30. And then the non-preview instances will be upgraded on July 17 and 18. So, we're still a little bit of a way off. Maybe they'll slip some other things in there in the meantime. They have been known to do that as well. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that has a knock-on effect to the following release as well, and whether, it's current world situations, then suddenly we'll find that these seasonal releases don't quite line up with the seasons they're intended to.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, shall we dive into some of the features that we've found that we thought were worthy of discussion?
I think we should.
Cool. So the first one is split view. So we've actually got a screenshot of this we can bring up on screen. So split view looks really useful. I guess there's the message in that fantastic conversation we just had that we lost.
We're both excited about that.
It's going to save a lot of opening tabs instead and bouncing back and forth between records. So try new things. It doesn't always work out, but that's all good. Everyone can check that one out in the release notes. But they got to look at a great screenshot of it, so they probably have a great understanding. So. Yeah. You live and learn. Second feature on the list was kind of a Divi feature that I added in, which I know some of the devs are excited by. It's called Lightning Messaging Service. So the way that the kind of component structure of Lightning components was kind of built from a security point of view, like you could only really operate inside your component. And so knowing what, if you had a page with multiple components, there was a bit of trickery required to kind of have those working in sync. And so this new messaging service provides a fairly straightforward way. The code sample that I've seen behind it is 5 lines of code on each side. I think it's what they call a pub sub model. So you can just publish a message out, and then somewhere there might be other components listening for that. And if they receive that message, they can then choose to do something with it. So I think that allows you to create context-aware components that kind of reacting to what else is happening around them, and ultimately create a better outcome for what you're trying to build. And I think this as well is much closer to the way other development frameworks work.
Right.
So I think from a developer point of view, there's a lot of appeal in that. So that should be good. I think again, it's something probably devs wanted 2 years ago, but at least it's kind of here now. The next one is one that you added to our list, Peter, Einstein Voice Assistant.
Yeah. Now, so first of all, this is in beta, so which means it doesn't necessarily going to be there at the end and all that type of stuff. But it's a good step forward to voice. I'm a lazy guy. We've got Google Home. We've now have one automated light in the house, and I do like saying, Google, turn on the lights, instead of bending down and turning the switch on. So having Einstein voice with that same kind of approach is interesting. Einstein, give me my top 10 opportunities. I want to be able to get to a place where we can say, give it basically a query in voice fashion, and it just goes off and does it. And that would be really, really cool. So this is the first steps towards that. I'm actually looking forward to getting in the sandbox, which I have got, and mucking around with this and getting it set up and seeing what it can do. Because look, voice is it's the way. Voice is the way of the future. Bit bizarre, bit of a strange comment, but it is. It's just taking that natural way of what you would think, and seeing Salesforce be able to translate that and actually deliver on it. Yeah, be interesting.
Yeah, key is getting the context right of what you're trying to instruct, because definitely you could, if they get that AI right, you could save so much time. And I think that's the kind of demos we originally saw at Dreamforce around this was, the use case of a traveling salesperson come out of a meeting, go back to their car, and they can record all their notes, in one recording, and have all fields updated in the opportunity and this kind of thing, which looks really cool. I feel like it was a little bit of vaporware at the time, and maybe this is now the usual story of now it's actually coming to fruition.
So at the Sydney World Tour, they did do a demo, and it was a real demo of voice to text, basically. And it was capturing the text in a note in real time in Service Cloud, and that was really cool. And that was, I think it was using, what's Amazon's voice called, whatever something.
Alexa.
It was using no, it wasn't actually Alexa. It's some other service they got, but
okay.
But it was the person was on the call. That's what happens with AI. So yeah, it was really, really accurate. It was really, really good. But to that point, I hope it doesn't get to a point where, like I am at home, where I'm just yelling at Google Home, and I'm sure our neighbours are wondering what's going on because Google Home won't either, recognise I'm speaking to it, or doesn't recognise what I'm saying. So.
Yeah, you got to be careful. One of the challenges I've seen is you're watching something on YouTube, and they talk about said service, and then suddenly all your devices in your house are triggering and going on. So hopefully Einstein voice isn't that common that people are finding ways to corrupt data in your CRM system with false
That's
instructions.
Can you imagine if the sales manager walked in and said, "Have you updated that opportunity to $10 million," and all of a sudden, bang, it happens?
Yeah. So, yeah, promising to see how that kind of keeps going and how they kind of roll it out as well. Will be interesting. And then, like usual, does it just become a paid feature that very few people actually kind of go for as well?
I hope it's got to be part of the platform. It's just got to be baked in. It can't be. It's on that on. It's just. And I suppose my view on that is it's because this is how we do things now. It should just be part of the product itself. So
yeah, no, I agree. Right, what we got next is this is one I added. It's a nice simple little feature, and again one that I wish it had been around years ago. Now I'm gonna try showing a screenshot. I think I've fixed the audio, so let's. Here we go. I can still see audio coming through, so that's good. So what this feature does is it lets you we've had report subscriptions for a while. You can set up a schedule, have those kind of emailed through, but now you can actually have the CSV output of that report come through as an attachment on that email. So the use case that I was thinking for this that's quite interesting is actually you could have the email sent to some automated service and actually consume that CSV and do something with it. So maybe it's just a very basic way of building an integration and getting data where it needs to go. So it looks super simple to set up. It's just another option when you set up your report subscription. And yeah, again, I think that'll be useful for people that they want to get that data out rather than get it in some kind of table form or have to actually then jump back into the report itself to export to Excel or a CSV.
Yeah, I can see a whole heap of use for that. Yeah, that's a really good one. Again, it's one of those ones you sort of say, well, hey, why didn't we have this years ago? But
Yep.
It's coming. It's the main thing.
Yep, that's right. Number 5 on our list, and this was another one I added. So they're calling it. It's interesting actually. This was an example, and I'm assuming all the audio is working, so I'm going to bring this one up on screen as well. I'm seeing this trend of actually bringing aspects from the setup menu back out from back office to front office almost. So this is an optimizer app that actually displays as an app, like the sales app or the service app. So you kind of access it through the front end, and it's giving you a whole bunch of recommendations of how you can maintain your org in a really, and take care of those things you need to do, so that you don't get yourself into a technical debt situation. So, one of the examples that they give is, here's some code that's using an old API version that you might want to go through and update. And so it's quite interesting. It's going to help admins, in particular, if there's anything around code and dev where they can then, the next thing would be to build a backlog of tickets and Jira or whatever system you use to then make sure that those things get ticked off and taken care of. So I'm seeing other things here: unassigned page layouts, unused dashboards, permission sets with a low number of users, API version. So obviously a few different categories that they've come up with, and then they can actually just keep building this out, I suspect, and keep giving recommendations. So I think this will be a big help to admins stay on top of all the things they need to from a maintenance point of view.
It's all about keeping your org optimized. Good name for it.
Straight to the point.
I was going to say clean, and then I changed my mind at the last second. That makes it really easy to stay on top of things. That's for sure.
For sure. Next up, B2B commerce. What's happening in that space, Peter?
Yeah, well, so interesting. The release notes gives a real flavour for where they're going with B2B commerce, and that's a big space for Salesforce, and I think it's also a very big space for right now. Again, can I refer to what's happened over the last few months? We've seen a whole heap of companies and change their model and realise that probably their online presence wasn't as strong as what it should be. So it's really good to see that Salesforce has got this coming out, and we're seeing more of this as being on the platform than what it was before. So, the notes mentioned being able to design, build, and launch a business-to-business commerce solution, tighter integration with their core commerce offering, which I think is brilliant. So, again, being able to do that stuff inside Salesforce rather than somewhere else. Um, I literally copied and pasted this into our own notes because I just like this phrase: create a beautiful buyer experience with the B2B commerce template. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like and what that beautiful buyer experience will be. I'm hoping it's a lot more seamless, a lot more current world than what we've seen in a lot of these commerce type of offerings, and not there's the Shopify experience which everybody's got. Hopefully this is a bit more finessed than that. It's a bit more current world. That's what we need. So
Yeah.
something a bit more sophisticated is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, well, my big takeaway was it looks like they have converted the entire product from being, the Cloud Craze managed app into being totally rebuilt on the platform in its core, which is, that's a big deal. It looks like, obviously existing customers, they're going to continue to maintain that managed package for existing customers, which they need to do. I'm sure there'll be some kind of transition plan for those existing customers. And the naming is quite interesting that they're giving the two products. So they're calling it the B2B Commerce for Visualforce Managed Package, which speaks to the fact that Cloud Craze was all built in Visualforce and had some custom aspects to how you built the UI on top of Visualforce as well. And now it looks like it's been completely converted to Lightning, so everything's back to standards based, much easier for any existing developer to pick up without learning something new, which that'll be great. And then, as you say, what are those templates? How easy can you spin something up? Because at a very basic level, you can spin something up that's pretty functional and operational on Shopify in half a day. Now this serves a different use case, and so it's going to need to double down on those B2B specific features, and tightly integrate with your whole sales process, everything else that's going on in your offline world, so that your offline and online world become seamless. And if they can pull that off, I think it's probably one of their most promising products at the moment, given everything happening.
Yeah. Be interesting to see what it would be priced at as well. Whether that changes through this. So hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think it's always been a struggle with anything external facing for how they price it. So is per user pricing appropriate? Is it per sale pricing? Is it even just to clip the ticket on the dollars that you put through the platform? But some way that the kind of the barrier to start is low, and then if you're super successful with your online store, that's when everyone wins, and that's the kind of pricing model that I'd like to see. But I'm not quite sure how they're looking at that one these days.
Finesse, doesn't it? Because otherwise, I mean, if they don't get the pricing model right, then the more you sell, it could become a very, very expensive thing, and take people off the platform onto something else that may not be as sophisticated and do what they want. So
true.
Cool.
And what's happening in the numerous vertical clouds?
Yeah, so this part of the notes is, I liked this because it's a real call out to saying, look, we're investing heavily in the different vertical clouds, and here's what we're doing in each one of these. And there is quite a bit going on, or it seems to be quite a bit going on. So, there's the health cloud, financial services cloud, consumer cloud, and manufacturing cloud. And again, we've got to get in, play around with the stuff because I do want to know what makes up all these things. But it's just really all I want to do is call out saying, hey, they're actually, like the B2B commerce, there's heavy investment in these clouds. So I expect we're going to see more and more of these things coming. And I suppose, we've seen some of that with some of the recent announcements, again, because of COVID. The sustainability cloud, that's been expanded out. We've seen work.com come back as a name, but as a product itself, which is in essence a cloud around all these things. So yeah, I think is signaling exactly where Salesforce is going on how they're going to bundle up these things to be more relevant for industries, and that they can get a whole heap more functionality out of the product from the get-go. So
Yeah, and what's going to be interesting for me is, they made the Velocity acquisition back in March, was it? Kind of before all this. Everyone's forgotten about that now with everything going on. But, Velocity had their own, certainly had a financial services cloud, which would overlap. So it'd be interesting to understand what their plan of kind of merging those two vertical products is. And then I think Velocity also had a media industry cloud as well, which isn't one of the core Salesforce verticals. So whether we suddenly just see that pop up as one of the new verticals as well. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if a year from now they sort of got 10 vertical clouds.
Which, and look, from our perspective, makes it interesting because ultimately you can't be experts in every single cloud.
Exactly.
So how do we get across those things, and how do we make sure? And this goes for everybody that's out there. How do you make sure you know what's going on in the bits that you want to specialize in? So
cool. Next one is improvements to Flow. And this is another one where I've got a screenshot and we've still got audio. So Flow's getting really sophisticated and quite powerful, which is cool. I think there's still some discrepancy around when to use a Flow and when to use Process Builder, and Workflow's still there, and then you can write code. But I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Flow. And so some of the things that are coming in this next release is updates to how you can trigger a flow. So originally, I think Flow's actually been around a long, long time as well. It was an acquisition, I remember, in like 2011, something like that. And you actually had to use an offline tool to build your flow, export the file, upload it to Salesforce. It's come a long way. And one of the key things that originally in this, it was a really clear distinction in my mind was flows were these screen flows. So you could build a simple wizard, so to speak, and step a user through something. And so that was triggered from a button or something. And you could still do record updates, do all these kind of database things, but it was initiated from a screen. But now in this release, there's things like scheduled flow, record change flow, platform event flow. So a lot of things that can happen behind the scenes now, and basically behave like a coded trigger would.
Yeah. So not needing a person to actually physically push a button, it's going to be able to use other things to actually trigger it.
Yeah. Which is cool. And then there's this other one called auto launched flow, which is so that can be something coming from a button and things like that. So a background piece of code that runs from a button. So lots of flexibility coming in there, which I'm really liking. And you can do a lot. This option to present screens to just sort of run silently in the background. And there's this new thing where you can run flows in the system context. And so where I've heard that talked about recently was, let's say you've got a public community. So you've got someone submitting data in the guest user context. You can actually, so they can save that data somewhere, but then you can trigger a flow in the system context that can then take that data and create a whole bunch of other objects that the guest user doesn't have access to.
Right.
So that's really actually quite,
out, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's quite powerful. And that was always possible, but you had to do it in quite hacky ways. So that's quite cool. I've seen there's a lot in these release notes actually around changes to the guest user. And part of it is kind of powering it up, but also a lot more security around the guest user and default permissions, and ensuring that you don't accidentally expose things you didn't mean to the guest user. So that's good to see as well. But yeah, I'm really liking flows and what can be done. It's a bit of a debate I read the other day around what's the skill set you need for flows.
Yep.
So there's a clear distinction previously between, okay, this is a developer because it involves writing code. This is a consultant because it's point and click. And flows is kind of this awkward thing in the middle where, okay, you're not actually writing code, but you still need the same logical thinking patterns. And so, yeah, there was a debate that I read in a post online suggesting that you should still, even if it's clicks not code, flows is something for developers only.
I was going to say, so what would see more developers using Flow than writing the code instead, maybe? Look, I'll be quite frank. I've tried to play with flows before, and I haven't been able to get my head around it. And that's simply because I probably haven't devoted enough time to it. And in my head, it's always sort of lent more to someone that is a dev more than someone coming from that point and click space. So, but obviously it's a large part of the platform. I think the other question, and it's always a question that comes up in every single project that we do. When do you use Flow? When do you use Process Builder? We've referred to it before. When do you use triggers? When do you use code? So, just getting that blend right, and that's where I lean on, the likes of our lead engineers to tell me what the right way is, because I'll probably get it wrong.
Yep. My theory is always just be consistent. If you're trying to debug something and a year ago someone wrote a trigger, then 6 months later someone else has written a workflow, and if you're chasing your tail, just trying to get to the bottom of things sometimes. So, anyway, there's probably lots of cases where you could choose anyway and it'll be perfectly fine, but just do it consistently.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
So what about next?
Next, we've got viewing records in full view. So again, this is kind of like split. This is actually even simpler than split view. So back in the days of Classic, you had your record detail, and then you had your related lists that sit nicely underneath. So the record detail aspect was taking the full width of the page. And then when we moved to Lightning, the default kind of template was this kind of 2/3, 1/3 split, where you would often, I think by default, you have record detail in the big section to the left, and then they tend to put activities and chatter and a few things in these little smaller panels down the right, and they just take up screen real estate. So now there's this view where you can toggle into full view and ultimately get something in Lightning that's kind of laid out a little bit more like the old Classic way of doing things, which I'm sure
slightly ironic, quite frankly.
Yeah. These things always go full circle. So I think something long-time users of the platform may enjoy that one.
And new users, we go, wow, that's amazing. So yes, we had that years ago.
Yeah. Yep. Next one's just another dev one that sort of jumped out at me. Reasonably simple, but something I think devs will like, because I think it brings the Lightning way of developing just more in line with other open source frameworks and other dev platforms that people use, is just this notion of shared CSS. So in your FSDX structure of directories and everything, you can now have a folder of CSS that's common across all your components, so that you can just come up with a style of, and this will probably be relevant building external components for things like communities, where you've build your style definitions once, and then just all your components can refer to this common style definition, and just I'm sure people did that already, but there was probably some scripting or just a lot of copy paste to see the styles replicated across all your components. So just another step in the right direction, I think, from a dev platform point of view that a lot of devs will like on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And last one on our list, which could be one of the most impressive features of all, once we kind of can get it and play with it, because it seems like it's got a lot of potential, is dynamic forms. So this, if I'm understanding it correctly, is part of, firstly, it's built on this new page layout approach that they're looking to bring in, which will replace traditional page layouts. So I think they've changed the name of that a couple of times. It's Lightning Page Layouts or something else, which can give you a lot more flexibility. So things, the original idea that I remember behind that was, let's say you wanted to build a custom component for a date picker, and you just want to swap out a single field on a page layout. You just couldn't. You would have to replace a whole section before to kind of just achieve your custom date picker. So this new page layout will get really specific down to the field level and let you swap things out with custom components. And so I think that's the precursor to all of this. And then, this feature, my understanding is, okay, we've got components can be custom visibility right now. So you could have sections on your page that only display to certain profiles or based on different criteria. But now you can actually do that and have that toggling in real time to say, okay, I just check this checkbox that says, this order is an overseas shipment, and then a whole nother section will appear and say, great, well, you need to fill out these extra things. And the way, in the past, you would have to have all those extra optional fields on the page layout, and you'd have a validation rule that says, well, hang on, you tick that box, so you have to fill out these fields. But this will just really allow you to clean up your page layout, so it's right back to basics, and then kind of things evolve and expand as you kind of fill out the detail. So that's quite exciting.
Do you think it will potentially replace record types? Because we sort of use record types to drive what we're going to see on the page more than anything else.
That's very true. I think it could. Yeah, because so often I see a one-to-one relationship between record types and page layouts.
Yeah.
So
having that dynamic bit where only showing the bits that are relevant to based on the choices I've made would be, it would minimise the need for record types. That's for sure. So I like the idea that just having a clean layout as well, instead of having 100 fields on a page and you only have those 10 for example, but as you're filling in the fields, it's going to pop the right thing for you. So it's a big move. It's a good. No, I know the conversation saying I wasn't that excited. I am a bit excited.
Well, the use case is quite good because this is one area that, going back to flows, that I actually thought was one of the good use cases for screen flows, was this ability to step users through a wizard-like approach, and you can, based on this screen input, you could go dynamically through a different series of screens to guide a user, and you could effectively just achieve the same thing on a page layout stepping through. So more options and more flexibility to create good user experiences. And the other aspect is there's been times that I've seen this requirement be solved with code. So you're launching this process, click this button on a page layout, that launches a Visualforce page and does something dynamic. So this will bring a lot of that back on platform as well, which is that'll save time. It'll really enable you to spin up something quite quickly, I imagine.
Yeah, and it's definitely more point and click than code, because it's driven by the fields you want to drop and how you want to use them. So good one.
It'll make debugging interesting. If one of those conditions doesn't fire properly, people are feeling a bit lost. But
that's where you have that one page layout that's got everything on
it. You need some way to default back.
I've now got 10,000 fields on this page. Hang on.
It's the rescue me button. Yeah. Very good. Well, that's the end of our list. 10 features plus a bonus one we threw in there of new features in Summer 20s.
An extra Easter egg or whatever, gem or whatever we call it these days.
And so that release was late July, did you say?
It is. It's July 17 and 18 is the time slot at this point in time. So well and truly in the middle of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Not so much down here.
No, it's getting cooler down here, that's for sure. So we might wrap it up there for today, and just as always, tell everyone about our new program, the Coach program, as part of SFDC Academy. And the way I've been describing it in the past week, Peter, has been we help people get unstuck and navigate through a lot of this complexity that they might see. So we offer a range of ways that you get to interact with us and get advice that you need. And good one could be helping you interpret that optimizer report that we talked about, optimizer app that's coming, or another one that dawned on me yesterday, or I got asked the question around these critical updates that you see come through. It's like a big scary message has come up. I don't know what to do. Please, help. So those are some of the things that I think, just a small part of how the members of the coach program we can help. So the website's there on the screen now for anyone who wants to learn more about that and check it out. Otherwise, that will be us for today. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will iron out any issues for next week. But Peter, it's been fun.
As always, man. See you all next week.
Thank you.